Stabbed in prison. Let me tell you why Derek Chauvin is such an issue for the regime. Chauvin, he's a loose end. Here's the issue. They know that Derek Chauvin did not murder George Floyd. If Floyd was murdered, then he was murdered by himself by overdosing on fentanyl. We saw the video, and America decided to cast our blame onto Derek Chauvin, and he was sacrificed in order for there to be mass election fraud. The color revolution that was sparked by George Floyd's death to give cover to a stolen election. See, all of that passion, all of that anger, it's all faded away now. Few years later, 2023. All of that passion and anger, it's faded away now, and Chauvin is a loose end. Derek Chauvin is a loose end, and I don't believe in coincidences. Okay, uh, coincidences, conspiracies. I don't know. I don't think it's a coincidence that a new George Floyd documentary came out just prior to Derek Chauvin getting stabbed. The documentary is called "The Fall of Minneapolis," and in the documentary, they show you how agents in Washington D.C. worked to alter this autopsy. They worked to alter it, to edit it. Why? Because they wanted to make sure Derek Chauvin took the blame. He had to take the blame. Derek Chauvin is innocent of the murder of George Floyd, and the regime is tying up a loose end. I'm waiting for us to hear about who stabbed Derek Chauvin. We haven't heard anything about the stabber. Got a lot to talk about this morning. It's the Morning Buzz, 309-451-9299. You can always see me live on YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, and Rumble. Today, we're going to be talking about McLean County, the government. They might be forced here to change their public comment policy, finally. It's a bit embarrassing, if you ask me. So we're going to get to that. Plus, Dan Caulkins, he's going to be visiting with me in the 7 o'clock hour, but Dan Caulkins' case could actually be heard by the United States Supreme Court. The Illinois Supreme Court upheld the so-called assault weapons ban. Did Caulkins get a fair shake in that trial? Did he get a fair shake from the Illinois Supreme Court? Well, we're going to talk about that here coming up in just a little bit. This is the case about the assault weapons ban here in the state of Illinois. The United States Supreme Court could possibly take a listen to this case. We'll know more by December 14th. But I'm I'm pumped because the reason why the United States Supreme Court is looking at this is, I think, bigger than the gun thing, the gun issue, the Second Amendment. It goes beyond the Second Amendment. It takes a look at corruption, and it speaks to corruption here in the state of Illinois and across the nation, because this is going on in several parts of the nation, with the Supreme Court possibly being corrupt at the very top. So we're going to be talking a little bit about that. Then there's this Jewish actress, MAYIM, BIALIK. I'm going to talk a little bit about her because I came across one of her tweets, and she's out there wondering why the feminists are, and where the feminists are, and why they're not condemning the rape and torture done by Hamas. Okay, so she's this Jewish actress, and she's a leftist, by the way. She's a hardcore leftist, and she's wondering where all of her feminist pals are at, where all the Black Lives Matter activists are at, that she's been standing in solidarity with for years. And they're nowhere to be seen. And I'm going to be talking about her here coming up in just a little bit. But first, I do want to dig into BLN News. They broke this story. I want to dig into how someone who wasn't named in the story, their name was concealed, someone actually filed with the Illinois Attorney General's Public Access Division concerning the McLean County government policies as it pertains to public comment. So this is kind of like a good thing. The Illinois Attorney General's Public Access Division is probably the best thing to come out of the state of Illinois. It's kind of like a checks and balances thing. They go through and they make sure that the public has access to government. That's essentially what this division is. And public comment, look, folks, it's your freedom of speech. It's your First Amendment right to address grievances with your government. Okay. Yeah, they're there to work for you. They're representatives. And it's your right to go present your grievances. So, McLean County, they've been dealing with a lot of grievances as it pertains to property taxes. I've talked about how property taxes are unconstitutional. Doesn't make a whole lot of sense why you're renting your land. Because think about it, you can own the house that you're, or the house that you're, uh, that sits on your land, but essentially you're renting that space from the government. And if you don't pay up, people with guns will come to your house and arrest you. The IRS will come knock on your door and arrest you. The cops will come arrest you if you don't pay your property taxes. Don't believe me? Just try not paying your property taxes. If you really want to mess around and find out, try not paying your property taxes. So to get back to McLean County, they think that uh, you need to give them 24 hours notice if you want to speak to them about, hey, I have an issue with my property taxes going up. Why are you guys not cutting this budget so that way I can feel some relief when it comes to these property taxes? Like I've told you before, Illinois has the second highest property taxes in the nation. And we spend the most per child, per student. And I've gone through this several times where do your property taxes go? When you write that check, you're essentially writing that check out to the school district in which you reside in. So and then they cut that check. They're spending unit 5, I think it's like 13,000 per student or something like that. And then the kids don't read. Okay, we've gone through the reading comprehension rates. We've gone through their math rate. They can't do math at grade level. They can't read at grade level. We've gone through all of that. So every time you cut a property tax check, that's going to a school district that's failing epically. And it doesn't matter how much money you throw at it, you see, and it doesn't matter how many kids aren't in the district because we continue to see this rise in employ the like staff. There's this rise in staff, not even really teachers. There's this rise in administration, and then there's teachers and students, and the enrollment is down, but the spending per child is up, and the number of employees and specifically administrators are up every year, and that's been going on for years. But anyway, McLean County, they think that you have to give them 24 hours notice if you want to go speak at public comment. That's their current policy. In order to go speak at public comment at a McLean County board meeting or at any McLean County government meeting, you have to give them 24 hours notice. That's their current policy. And this is the issue. This is what this undisclosed person, I don't know their name, they took issue with that. So they filed with the Illinois Attorney General's Public Access Division. And they filed it's like a grievance. It's like hey, check this out, investigate it. So Illinois does one thing right. It's this Public Access Division. They do not like units of government with printed policies that obviously violate your rights. You have a First Amendment right. You have the freedom of speech. You have this First Amendment right. And within that First Amendment right, you can address your grievances with your government. And yeah, this division of this public access division does not like it when units of government, McLean County government, they have a printed policy that is in violation of the First Amendment. So if you remember, if you're a normal light, if you are a normal resident, you were forced they were forced by you, the normalites, to change their policy multiple times because people were filing with the Public Access Division. So Public Access forced changes after citizens filed numerous complaints about their public comment criteria. Okay, so the town of Normal, they've already had to change theirs numerous times, their policy. So now it's the county government's turn. People who wish to speak should only be required to sign up 15 minutes prior to the meeting. If you ask me, I am a free speech absolutist. I think that if you should show up to a school board meeting, if you should show up to a McLean County government meeting or a town of normal meeting, you should be able to walk up there and you shouldn't even have to give your name or your address or anything like that. You should be able to go up there and address the government. You should be able to just do that with, and remain anonymous or, you know, uh, not give them your name. But yes, so some people think that, yeah, and the way it is for most municipal governments here in Bloomington, and I believe in Normal, for school boards, I know for a fact, I think it's like 15 minutes prior to the meeting, and you have to say your name if you go up there, and you have to give some sort of address where you live. I think that's terrible. We shouldn't require people to give their address. I don't know if that's changed. It might change. These policies change all of the time because people file grievances, but or file their complaints with the Public Access Division. But if we hop back to 2014, and kudos to Diane Benjamin, I mean, check out her story. She's got all of the receipts here, folks. Back in 2014, the county was actually found guilty of violating what's called an Open Meetings Act. When their policy prior to this policy, which is you have to give them 24 hours notice, they actually were requiring people wishing to speak at public comment to sign up 5 days in advance, long before the agenda for that meeting was even posted. That's ridiculous. That's what they were doing, the McLean County government. And they were found in violation of that Open Meetings Act back in 2014. So Normal had to be reported more than once before they pretended to comply with the Open Meetings Act. So far, it's taken the county twice. So they've had to, Normal has been reported more than once before they pretended to comply with the Open Meetings Act. Now, their written policy is in compliance with the Open Meetings Act, but you can still play games and move around the agenda items so that way people don't know uh, what is going to be talked about at the council meeting. And Normal still does all of that, but so far it's taken the county twice uh, to, to to be reported in order to try to comply with this Open Meetings Act. Which I'm curious what's going to happen, because signing up 24 hours in advance is ridiculous, and it proves, and bottom line, what this all is, it proves that government does not want the citizens voicing their opinions at these meetings. That's just the facts. Otherwise, they wouldn't require you to sign up 24 hours in advance at these meetings. I've been to these meetings. Nobody ever comes. Okay, that's the thing. So to require people to sign up 24 hours in advance is just one more barrier, and that's might be a reason why people don't come to these meetings. That's just another reason to not have the citizens there voicing their opinions at any kind of county board meeting. So it'll be fun to see what the split board, the county board, how they respond to this. The county board members, I don't know if they know of this filing, and I wonder if and how many of these people on the county board are going to actually respect the rights of the citizens, and who actually thinks government should listen to the citizens. So take note of how these Democrats and Republicans on the county board respond to this filing. I think it's going to be really exciting. All right, I do have to take a quick break, but next we're going to be talking a little bit about this U.S. Supreme Court. They could possibly be looking at Dan Caulkins' case. This is in regards to the so-called assault weapons ban that was upheld by the Illinois Supreme Court. And I'm super pumped for this because it not only takes a look at the Second Amendment, but it takes a look at the corruption that's gone on here in the state of Illinois. And the U.S. Supreme Court might actually pick this up because and I believe that the Illinois Supreme Court did not come by that ruling honestly. And I think that it was corruption all the way around. So we're going to talk about that here on the Morning Buzz, Cities 92.9. Find me on YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, and Rumble. morning. Hey, thanks so much for tuning in. I so do appreciate it. We're going to be back talking a little bit about the so-called assault weapons ban. I hate calling it the assault weapons ban because what the heck is an assault weapon? So the Illinois ban on so-called assault weapons is facing a new challenge. Republican State Representative Dan Caulkins is petitioning and has petitioned the U.S. Supreme Court to review the state Supreme Court's decision to uphold this law. Um, the U.S. Supreme Court, it's actually on the docket. So Dan Caulkins said that there's a chance that the U.S. Supreme Court could hear his case because there's actually a little precedent. And I'm going to talk about that here on the buzz because it's a big deal. Um, the precedent, it's called Caperton. And that's a court case where it looks at the recusal of state Supreme Court justices. So there should have been a recusal that went on, but it didn't go on. And we're going to chat about it here on the Morning Buzz. I'm very excited. Send me text messages at 309-451-9299. So much to get to this morning. Good morning. This is the Morning Buzz. Earlier this morning, we talked a little bit about Derek Chauvin, and I told you guys he is a loose end, and the regime is trying to tie up this loose end. I want to know who stabbed Derek Chauvin. I don't know if we will ever find out who stabbed Derek Chauvin, uh, but Derek Chauvin did not murder George Floyd. Floyd was murdered by himself by overdosing on fentanyl. That's very clear by the autopsy. If you guys haven't seen the documentary, I haven't seen all of it. Full disclosure, I started it last night. It's called The Fall of Minneapolis. And in the documentary, they actually show you how FBI federal agents in Washington, D.C., they actually worked to alter this autopsy. They even pressured the coroner to change the autopsy. Why? Because they wanted to make sure Derek Chauvin took the blame. Why? Because he was a sacrifice. He was a sacrifice. We had to cast all our blame on Derek Chauvin for there to be mass election fraud. See, because Derek Chauvin, this death of George Floyd, it actually sparked a color revolution and it gave cover to the stolen election. Everybody was so focused on the BLM riots. Nobody was looking at how they were taking COVID and manipulating our elections using under the guise of COVID, under the guise of BLM, Black Lives Matter protests. This was all a cover to a stolen election. So all that passion has faded away. All that anger about George Floyd's death has faded away. And they've got to tie up a loose end. They got to tie up a loose end. And I think Donald Trump is also a loose end. They know they stole the election from him. They know that Derek Chauvin did not kill George Floyd. They know that he didn't murder George Floyd. And they've got to tie up some loose ends. So the regime is working overtime. Before I took the break, I was telling you guys a little bit about uh, Dan Caulkins and his case and how it could be heard by the United States Supreme Court. It's a big deal. And I'm very excited about it because the Illinois Supreme Court upheld this so-called assault weapons ban. It bans magazines. I think it's like 15 rounds or more for handguns. It's a little less for rifles, I believe. So there's all kinds of things that are banned. It bans a lot of weapons, a lot of firearms. And Dan Caulkins, I don't think he got a fair shake in the Illinois Supreme Court. So a big thing about Dan Caulkins' case, which I absolutely loved, was that he actually argued for equal protection under the law. So the assault weapons ban, as it currently stands, it's exempts really police officers. Police officers are allowed to have AR-15s, but you are not in the state of Illinois. In fact, you have to register your AR-15 with the state if you currently have one by January 1st, 2024 or something like that. A lot of people aren't doing that. People who own AR-15s are not registering their guns, which is kind of hilarious. But this was very evident to me at the Joliet Thanksgiving, Christmas Day parade or Christmas parade. It's the day after Thanksgiving. It's Santa Claus is out there, and we got to ride a horse-drawn carriage. It was awesome, and I got to spend some time with my family. But my brother looks over at me and he's like, "Kat," he's like, "Wait, that's an AR-15 that guy's holding." It was some sort of guy, police officer. He had an AR-15 strapped to his chest, and he had all kinds of tactical gear on. It's pretty typical if there's large crowds, you'll find somebody like that in the crowd, a police officer with an AR-15, just in case there's a mass shooting. We understand that Darrell Brooks mowed down people in the Waukesha Christmas parade. We remember that. So I felt much safer with him there. The police officer with the AR-15. However, if I were to have an AR-15, I couldn't do that in the state of Illinois. And police officers are allowed to have AR-15s, but I'm not allowed to have an AR-15. So Dan Caulkins' case was arguing that that's not right. There has to be equal protection under the law. And it was a really strong case, but the Illinois Supreme Court still upheld this unconstitutional assault weapons ban. It's unconstitutional. It's against the Second Amendment. But and it's also against the 14th Amendment, which says that you have to have equal protection and the law has to be applied equally to everybody. So Dan Caulkins said there's actually a chance for the for the United States Supreme Court. So this is the big boy court to hear this case because there's this little precedent, and I love this precedent. I'm kind of get nerdy about this kind of stuff. It's called Caperton v. A.T. Massey Coal Company, and you guys can look up the case on Google. But really, what the case is all about, it's about judges and how they're required to recuse themselves, not only when there's actual bias, and that's been demonstrated, but when a judge has economic interest in the outcome of the case, but also when there are extreme facts that create the probability of bias. Okay, extreme facts. So this was a really cool case. I'm going to play a bit of Dan Caulkins' interview with David Paul Blumenschein from over the weekend coming up in just a little bit. But we'll revisit the Illinois Supreme Court justices and how they were bought, really, to uphold the Illinois gun ban, the Illinois assault weapons ban, or whatever. They were really bought off by Governor J.B. Pritzker because they received campaign donations. But it gets even juicier than that, folks, because they got campaign donations from Governor J.B. Pritzker, from Kwame Raoul, the Attorney General, and they got campaign donations from Don Harmon's attorney through this super PAC. So this was a secret super PAC, and they gave money to the Illinois Supreme Court justices Mary Kay O'Brien and Rockford, I think is her name, or something like that, Elizabeth Rockford or something. But they got money from both the executive branch and the legislative branch. And they bought off the judicial branch. Okay, so this is a real problem, because now you don't have this checks and balances going on. Now the legislative branch or the executive branch can buy off the judicial branch with campaign money. So we're going to get to that here coming up in just a little bit. But first, William J. Kelly joining me, award-winning journalist out of Chicago. We've got to talk and catch up about Chicago violence, especially over the weekend. All I kept hearing were these armed robberies. There was 14 in less than 3 hours on Sunday. And then I think even was it on Friday or maybe even Thanksgiving morning, where there was like armed robberies, and they are holding people up, and they're getting it done. Like it is calculated. It is like boom, 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 boom. We're gonna go to this shop, this shop, this shop. There was somebody in like some sort of blue sedan, and I was watching the footage of this, holding people up, and it was just almost it was like a rhythm that they were in. It stopped, really. I mean, that takes dedication to hold up that many people in that time span.
Well, yeah. It it's like 14 in in an hour, and then it's 14 the next hour. You know, as a reporter, you try to keep up with the numbers because that's what I always want to provide your listeners, Kat. But you know, 1 minute it's 13, the next minute it's 25, and the weird thing about it is it's the exact same MO. Like, as you said, 4 or 5 guys jump out of a stolen car. By the way, stolen cars are up by like there's I heard some crazy statistic. There's like 15,000 stolen cars in the city of Chicago right now. You can't. I mean, and tomorrow it'll be double. That's the weird thing about it is you want to be able to keep up with these numbers, but it's impossible at this point to keep up with the numbers, Kat. It just literally is. It's like migrant funding. You know what I mean? It doubles every time you refresh your screen. But what's really, so it's not only the numbers, okay? It's the fact that regular, ordinary Chicagoans are walking down the street, walking a dog, trying to get to work, and they are violently robbed by a group of usually teenagers in a stolen car, and recently the photos from security cameras show that they have long guns. Now, it's a little strange that Governor Pritzker, as I was listening to your show before you came to me here, obviously he wants you to register your gun. But these violent repeat offenders, and that's the other thing about it. These are repeat offenders. These are people who have already been convicted of gun crimes, and they obviously have guns, and now, sadly, bizarrely, our elected officials, J.B. Pritzker at the top of the list, want to make it harder for law-abiding citizens to defend themselves using a gun, a weapon. Any leader at any time in history, if his or her people were being attacked, would require the law-abiding citizens to arm themselves. In Israel, it's my understanding. I'm not I'm not an expert, but it's my understanding that citizens are required to undergo arms training. I believe that it's the same is true in Switzerland. Any leader that truly loves their people want their people to be armed, the law-abiding people to be armed to protect themselves against the dangerous criminals. It's just bizarre that in Illinois it's the exact opposite, Kat.
Yeah, well, the 15-year-olds, I guess they didn't get the memo that they were supposed to register those AR-15s. Wait a second. They also didn't get the memo that they're not even supposed to have a gun at the age of 15.
Right.
Like, they're
how dumb would you feel if, like, you're walking down the street with your wife, your girlfriend, and a 15-year-old comes up, jumps out of a car with a long gun, and all you have is a Starbucks cup, to defend yourself. I mean, how dumb do you have to be?
Well, and that's, and like you, I mean, I've interviewed, we had a mass shooting here in Normal a couple of years ago over in this trailer park, and I went and I interviewed some of the victims, and somebody who has a weapon wielded against them, that is a different category or level of victimhood.
Right. Yeah.
They shut down. They won't talk about it. And I mean, when you're and it doesn't matter if it's a ball bat or if it's a gun, anything that somebody uses to wield against you, and you are literally defenseless. There's nothing you can do. You just have to take that beating, or you have to take that bullet.
Well, growing up on the south side of Chicago, I can tell you, I was literally the victim of I literally got jumped my first day of kindergarten. Okay, so I mean, I'm familiar with the concept. It really, I guess what really bothers me as a lifelong Chicagoan is all I ever see in a headline now is Chicago man commits robbery. Chicago man commits, violent assault. And I think to myself, will future historians just think that Chicago man is a synonym for criminal? I mean, my God, this is, as a lifelong, as a reporter, but also as a lifelong Chicagoan, it breaks my heart. And these are all repeat offenders. That's the other thing. We already had a problem, obviously, with repeat offenders in the city of Chicago prior to the Safety Act, but now, I don't think I think I hate to say it, but I don't think they're even trying to catch these kids. They know they're just gonna be let out.
Well,
no cash bail.
Tell me about these guys, age 27, age 20. This guy was taken to the ground and handcuffed, and the other guy left the store a short time later. Was this some sort of holdup, and then they were released shortly after this? Was it a holdup?
Well, are we referring to the migrants now, or have we shifted gears to repeat violent migrants, or are we still on repeat violent Chicagoans?
This is, I think they're migrants. So Guevara Zero and Angulara Appreciation. I don't know. I can't say.
Or as the Chicago media would refer to them, Chicago men.
They're not Chicago men.
They're Chicago men now, Kat. Come on. If you sleep on a police station, Kat, if you get off a bus from the border and you sleep on the floor at a police station, you are now officially Chicago man.
I see.
I mean, it's unbelievable. But yeah, now, okay. So as if it wasn't bad enough, as if we didn't have enough domestic repeat offenders, now we've imported, foreign domestic offenders, and the weird thing about it is it's not just the migrant issue now. It's not just the spending issue. Okay, every time I refresh my screen, it's another 60 million to build a tent. I mean, is there any accountability? Is anybody getting any actual accounting of where this money is being spent? I think these migrant managers or migrant vendors are getting filthy rich off of this migrant crisis issue. I mean, if you could get somebody to pay you $60 million to put up a tent, I suppose, who wouldn't take that deal, right? But the reason why this is getting worse is because we are now getting the reports that the Venezuelan migrants are committing crimes, and they're being, if they even are arrested, they're being released with no cash bail. So this is the new crisis, the next step here, and they can't find them. Of course, they don't show for their court date. And on the paperwork, get this, Kat, you can't make it up, and why would you want to, right?
They have no permanent residence either.
Exactly. So they're literally saying that on the paperwork, under residence, they've written tent.
Wow. Incredible. That's absolutely wild. And here's the thing.
It's a mockery. It's a mockery of law and order. It's a mockery of our society. It's a mockery of our culture, our civilization. It's an absolute mockery. And Let
me ask you this. You've probably seen, actually, I believe you're Irish yourself.
Half Irish, half Swedish. So you're Swedish, right?
Yep, I'm Swedish. So
it's a good thing. It's a good
thing. And Irish. Actually, on my dad's side.
What?
Irish. Yes. So he's got actually a red beard, my dad.
Okay.
Well, now it's a bit gray, but because it's getting up there. But it used to be red. So he has a red beard, and he's got Irish in his family. But I want to ask you about Dublin. So we've got Dublin, Ireland, and we've got these stabbings of these children, and now we're starting to see a shift. The people on the right, right? The police chief, I think they're in Dublin. He said that it's far right people who are rioting, looting in the streets, and I get it. I mean, fiery protests, I'm against them, and I'm against all kinds of robbing shoplifters or anything like that. But I'm going to
Right.
ask you this. In Chicago, I think that this is where we would begin to start to see this shift where people on the
Yeah.
right begin to take matters into their own hands, and then they become anti-law and order. So, is there? Do you have an idea of a catalyst of what could happen in Chicago that would cause people on the right to start to go against law and order? Because traditionally, those on the left, BLM activists, the pro-Palestinian riots, protests, things like that, those on the left typically cause these fiery protests, burn things, burn buses, deface statues. When is that shift going to happen? Do you think a shift will happen in Chicago where Chicagoans who are law abiding?
It's already happening. Yeah. And by the way, just to be clear, I prefer police cars that are not on fire. Okay. And I mean, I just want to make that perfectly clear. I grew up in what they call what was traditionally, I guess still is, a cop neighborhood on the south side of Chicago. And because if you wanted to be a police officer, you had to live in the city of Chicago. The residency requirements, Mayor Daley, the old man Daley, Richard J. Daley was very smart about that. So I consider police officers. I'm not just pro law enforcement. I consider them to be like friends and neighbors. I don't, differentiate. But there's no doubt about it. You're definitely starting to hear Chicagoans sound like they're at a Trump rally. I mean, it's unbelievable. You have, and one of the most interesting developments, if I may, is when you listen to Black residents on the south side of Chicago saying that they don't want these migrants in their neighborhood because they don't feel safe and they don't want resources diverted away from their own community towards migrants. It's actually almost comical because these are like the exact same words that have been condemned as racist for decades, and now they're the exact same words are literally coming out of the mouths of Southside Black residents in regards to migrants. But the fact of the matter is that, and in fact, here's another funny example of this. In Brighton Park, the alderwoman Ramirez said that she was going to build this tent camp in her ward, and her residents, who are overwhelmingly, Hispanic and in some cases Asian, actually started shouting at her that they didn't want this, that they did not want migrants in their neighborhood, and the media referred to her voters, her residents, as right-wing extremists. That I'm sure that must have come as a huge shock to them, because it is really strange how the media is so determined to say that anyone who doesn't want an unvetted migrant, someone who we don't know what their medical history is, mental history, we don't know what their criminal history is, we don't even know what their real name is, and now they're supposed to be living in a tent in front of your house. But what the media is determined to do, and apparently all over the world, from Chicago to Dublin, the media is determined to say that anyone who doesn't want this must be a right-wing extremist. No, anyone who doesn't want a complete stranger living in a tent in front of their house is common sense. That's not extremism. That's called common sense, Kat.
Yeah. Well, William J. Kelly, we have got to take a break, but folks, reporter WilliamJKelly.com. Go subscribe. He's Emmy Award winning, and go find him on Twitter. He's that reporter, William J. Kelly. Thanks so much for joining me.
Thank you, Kat. God bless you.
We're going to be back next, folks. This is The Morning Buzz. Good morning, folks. If you're watching, go ahead and smash the like button. We're going to be back in just a little bit talking a bit about Dan Caulkins, this so-called assault weapons ban, and how the United States Supreme Court could actually be listening to it or hearing it. So if you're watching, go ahead and smash the like button. Good morning. Thanks so much for tuning in, Blooper. Appreciate it. Subscribe to my YouTube channel, and we're going to be back very, very shortly. I love it. We're going to revisit this because Dan Caulkins will be joining me on the show probably around 7:30 or so. We are going to revisit this Illinois Supreme Court, how they were bought by Governor J.B. Pritzker, but not only Governor J.B. Pritzker. No, 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 no. They were also bought off by Don Harmon's attorney via the super PAC. So they had all kinds of money funneled into their campaign coffers by the super PAC, by Governor J.B. Pritzker, by Kwame Raoul. And now the United States Supreme Court could review Dan Caulkins' case here as pertains to the so-called assault weapons ban. Okay, so the Illinois Supreme Court, we get this. They made the decision to uphold this unconstitutional law. It is a violation of our Second Amendment. Dan Caulkins actually argued the equal protection under the law, the 14th Amendment. And as I told you, what that really is, it's, why do police officers get to have these types of guns, but I don't as a citizen? So police officers get AR-15s, but I have to register mine with the state by January 1st of 2024. That doesn't make a whole lot of sense. That's in violation of the 14th Amendment. That's not equal protection under the law. The law has to be applied equally to all citizens. And that's how Dan Caulkins argued this assault weapons ban. Now the Illinois Supreme Court, they made this decision to uphold that law, but two justices on the Illinois Supreme Court took $1 million each about from Governor J.B. Pritzker, and then also took money from a super PAC that Don Harmon's attorney actually runs. So we're going to be chatting a little bit about that here coming up in just a little bit. But also, we're going to be visiting with Mike Coolidge, and I really want to talk about how we've got at the White House, they are trying to label everything misinformation. So actually this TikTok video I came across, and it's Bidenomics, where this team, the team on in the White House, the Biden team, they are so flustered with this TikTok video because what it does, it's just a guy filming his lunch. And he says that, hey, a burger and fries and a soda at McDonald's costed me $16. So this is the TikTok, and they want to label that misinformation. They want social media to label that misinformation. You don't need to log on to social media to know that every time families shop at a grocery store, it gets expensive. Okay. I don't need to see a TikTok video to know that every single time I go into a grocery store, everything is so expensive. And it's because of Sleepy Joe's economy. Okay. Otherwise known as Bidenomics. So Americans are currently dealing with elevated levels of inflation that have not been seen in decades. And the White House wants you to disbelieve your eyes uh, to improve approval ratings on the economy. Okay. So they want you to not uh, speak out about what you are seeing, what you are experiencing. So, like I said, there was this TikTok video of a guy claiming that his double quarter pounder meal cost him $16.10, and that was circulating online. And the Biden team was in overdrive yesterday to try to improve its economic message. They want to improve this economic message. And this is according to the Washington Post. The Biden team is actually working with social media platforms to counter that misinformation. So not only did they work to censor information about COVID-19 and about how ivermectin works, but now they're trying to censor information about the economy. And they're trying to take down this TikTok video of this guy claiming that this quarter pounder meal cost him $16.10. And that's just true. He shows you the receipt. Okay. So, this effort to counter the reports that food and other items cost a lot after after this Biden era inflation, this is disturbing that they are putting that much effort into censoring economic information just so that way Joe Biden gets a higher approval rating. We're going to get into the approval ratings of Donald Trump and Joe Biden here next on the Patriot Power Plug. This is Cities 92.9. Good morning. Thanks so much for tuning in. I so do appreciate it. Um, that also most commonly used firearms in the country, and they already ruled against that, so this shouldn't be an issue. But because Jelly Bean and Company, it is. Yeah, so we're going to be chatting with Dan Caulkins about that Illinois Supreme Court ruling, um, and how he thought that he didn't get a fair shake, and he really didn't. So, fun fact for you: Mary Kay O'Brien. I don't know a whole lot about the other justice, but Mary Kay O'Brien is actually from my neck of the woods, Wilmington area. I actually went to school with her kids. It's kind of weird how her kids are like super based. I think they're Trumpies. Like they post memes about Donald Trump and they like Donald Trump. So I don't know what happened with Mary Kay O'Brien. She's just this white liberal woman and she pretends that she's not. Um, and so I commented on her campaign page actually. And I wish I had proof. I do have screenshots, and that might actually help the case here and prove that these Illinois Supreme Court justices felt poorly about the campaign. Like, so I posted on her campaign site a screenshot from illinoissunshine.org. If you guys don't know how to use it, it's really simple. Just go in, type in an elected official or somebody running for office, type in their name, and then you can see who all donates to their campaign. It's very, very telling, and it's helped me a lot. But Mary Kay O'Brien, I go and I type in her name, right? Because I'm doing my due diligence. And I thought it was odd that she was running as a Democrat. That's the reason why I went to IllinoisSunshine.org, because I know of her and I know of her family. And I thought it was odd that she was running as a Democrat. Um, but it just goes to show you that it doesn't matter if they, go to the football games and they talk like you and they sound like you. They can sneak in there. And don't you forget that. So she is running as a Democrat, and I was like, okay, who's donating to her campaign? Then I see it. 2 installments of $500,000 from Governor J.B. Pritzker, 2 separate PACs, because of course, Governor J.B. Pritzker, he was like, yeah, I'm all about campaign finance law, and I'm all about, being ethical when it comes to campaign. I'm going to cap it at $500,000. That's actually a law he made where you cannot give more than $500,000 to a candidate. So he made this law, but he has 2 PACs that he donates from, or two areas where he donates from $500,000 each from each PAC. So there's a loophole in this law. So he just donated 500,000, so $1 million in total from Governor J.B. Pritzker. Now, what I didn't see, and it was a secret PAC. That's how that's how I missed it. It was a secret PAC where Don Harmon, his attorney, was running this PAC, and they gave money to these justices as well. A lot of money, thousands of dollars. So you've got the legislative branch, Don Harmon, via his attorney. And then you've got the executive branch buying off the judicial branch. That's essentially what this is. And anyway, so I published her campaign finance information, and I said, "Why is JB giving you $1 million?" Because if people knew in my district, people voting for her, hey, that she got $1 million from Governor J.B. Pritzker, oh, that would raise some eyebrows and that would raise some hell. So I published that on her campaign website. She blocks me from her campaign page on Facebook. She blocks me from the page, and then she goes through and deletes all of my comments. And tell me this, does that sound like behavior from somebody who doesn't feel guilty about taking that money? If you didn't feel guilty about taking that money, and if it was all transparency, and if it was totally fine that you took all of that money, then why delete the comments? Why delete the fact that you did get this money from Governor JB? Why then block me? Right? So this is clear bias. There's a clear stirring going on inside of this woman's heart, clearly, or inside of her, to where she felt provoked to block me and felt provoked to delete the information that Governor JB Pritzker donated to her. They will sit there and dismiss. They'll say, we shouldn't have recused ourselves, we didn't have to because we didn't do anything wrong, blah blah blah. Really, you didn't do anything wrong? Then why didn't you keep up the receipts, Mary Kay O'Brien? Why didn't you keep up the receipts, the $500,000 installments, 2 of them, to your campaign? That's the truth. It's the truth. So now the United States Supreme Court, they're going to actually be possibly looking at, Dan Caulkins will know more by December 14th. If the States Supreme Court, it's really hard to get your case heard by the U.S. Supreme Court. Now, we know that George Floyd was actually denied by the U.S. Supreme Court to have his case appealed. So it's very hard to get your case heard by the United States Supreme Court. However, there's this precedent, and that's why Dan Caulkins' case could possibly be heard by the United States Supreme Court. It's already on the docket. So there's a good chance. There's a good chance. All right. I've got to come back for our radio friends. We're going to be talking with Mike Coolidge. We've got so much to run through with Mike. I'm excited about it. First, we've got to talk about this weird misinformation czar at the White House and how they've actually resorted to taking down TikToks of people just posting their receipts and talking about Bidenflation. So that's next. So how much does a quarter pound? I don't know. I don't go to McDonald's, so I have no idea how much a quarter pounder costs these days. But this guy on TikTok, he was sharing out this video and he claimed that his double quarter pounder meal actually cost him $16.10. And that was a video that was circulating online. And the Biden team is now in overdrive trying to be like, let's improve the economic message. We have to improve this message. And the Washington Post actually came out with a story and they said, and I'm quoting from the story here, that the Biden team is working with social media platforms to counter misinformation as it pertains to the economic message. So that way they improve in the approval rating. So they have low approval ratings on the economy specifically. Joe Biden does. And now the only way to improve, the only way to get those approval ratings up is by censoring information, true facts. I mean, the facts, the guy takes a picture of his receipt. Look at the TikTok. The guy actually takes a picture of his receipt. So it's very clear that this is not fake. It's the truth. And they want to censor that information, much like they censored information about how ivermectin works and saves lives, much like they censored information about how BLM was money laundering. So joining me here to break it all down, I guess the White House actually has a misinformation czar, Mike Coolidge. He's a lifelong conservative, joins me on Tuesdays at around 7 a.m. for Patriot Power Plug. Mike, good morning. How are you?
Good morning, Kat.
Good morning, Kat.
Happy
post-Thanksgiving.
Yeah, what was your Thanksgiving?
Pre-Christmas time. Yes, it was fantastic. Stayed here in Northern Illinois, and it was nice to have sunny days on Thanksgiving. And then the snow yesterday. I'm sure. Did it snow down where you guys are too?
Oh, yeah. It snowed on Sunday. It snowed on Sunday, like a couple of inches, and it was a mess trying to get to church in the morning. And I was like, I've got a truck, but my tires definitely need some changing. I'm one of those people who use the tires until it's like it's smooth. Like I get the most
so you can
out of those
see a reflection of yourself in the tires. Yes, not
Yes.
good, cats. I'm sure people who love you would tell you don't do that. You're gonna get dangerous.
Yes. So
I will
go
say that I have in the last week been to a McDonald's and gotten a Big Mac. That's my guilty pleasure. And yeah, in Rochelle, a Big Mac sandwich itself with nothing else is over $5. It's like $5.40. This guy whose TikTok went viral bought one of the special burgers, and yeah, large fry, regular drink, no dessert, no extra 4-piece McNuggets or anything, $16. So this White House disinformation czar, his guy's name is Rob Flaherty, something like that. And the Washington Examiner just did a piece about this. Byron York pointed it out. They tried to do this disinformation and misinformation organization or czar a couple of months back, remember, and it blew up. And that woman they made, when the Republicans took over Congress, they're like, yeah, this isn't happening. We're not funding that. But they're still trying to find a back way to do it. And this guy, Rob Flaherty, was the man behind the White House smashing all of the Twitter stories at the time. It was called Twitter, about the Hunter Biden laptop, or he was on the Biden campaign in the Biden world, smashing all those stories and squashing all those stories. And, when I grew up, when I was in politics and still am in politics, but in the political world in the 90s and the 2000s, and even back 10 years ago, this was called spin. They had a spin room where it was acknowledged that people needed to have the news stories sort of massaged and manipulated in a way that pushed your narrative forward. So you had to spin it, right? It's like a PR thing. Well, now I guess spin is passe. They don't believe in spin anymore, Kat. They believe we're going to actually change the wording and the ability of companies that produce news to not produce news that hurts their cause. And we're going to use the strong arm of the government to stop them from doing so. So this guy and this Karine Jean-Pierre and the rest of them, their method now is to, when they see a story that goes viral on TikTok about how a meal costs real, that's a fact, that it's going up actually. In the story itself, the woman talks about in where she lives, a McDonald's meal is $17 in Connecticut. This is their new way of squashing the news. And it's the most anti-First Amendment kind of free speech way of doing things. If they don't like news, or if they see news they don't like, it's about making sure that eyeballs don't see it versus the way to be, which is just spinning things and letting the people decide. And this is the new way of Biden, and they just keep trying it, and they're going to keep trying it until they fail.
Yeah, well, and, you know, I always bring this up for my listeners, and people's eyes when I tell them this in person, they just go, what? So when I was in journalism school over at Illinois State University, first day you get there and they give you an AP style book. This is a thick book, and they say, this is your Bible. Don't go anywhere without it. So that, first of all, I mean, so disgusting.
Not blasphemous at all, but yes.
Kind of blasphemous. But in the AP style book, so here's an example. You can't refer to third world countries as third world countries. You have to refer to them as, quote, developing nations. And it's basically vocabulary that you are forced to use. So now they're just kind of squashing all kinds of media that they don't like. But here's the thing that bothers me. They already have media running interference for them because they use the language deemed appropriate. So this is your, George Orwellian, like this is very Orwellian, this AP style book, because
yes,
you even have to capitalize like the word black, and you have to lowercase the word white when referring to people.
Right.
And it gives the reason why, because black people are oppressed, blah, blah, blah. And that's very creepy. So they've already got the media already. Like, I mean, in journalism school, that's like you have to use the speak. You have to use the new speak, I guess.
The new speak, exactly. That's what they called it in 1984. Yeah, Rush Limbaugh pointed this out years ago, and so many of them, and by them I mean the legacy media and the cultural elites, they don't need even the orders from higher to speak this way. They're already indoctrinated. They already are down with the fight, so they will do this anyway. Yes. And it needs to be pointed out. And another example of this I don't know if you saw this Deadspin article, which I didn't know existed anymore. Deadspin used to be this kind of cool website about sports that didn't really have to answer to the sports people, so they were independent. And then it went wokeified like 10 years ago. I thought they went bankrupt because they were owned by Gawker, who went bankrupt. Anyway, this writer has a picture of a kid at a Chiefs game, and half of his face is looking this way, and his face is black, and he's got an Indian headdress on, which is obviously the mascot of the Kansas City Chiefs. And he is super, passionate about his team, and he loves them. And the colors of the Kansas City Chiefs are black, white, and red, mostly red and white, but also black. He's got on black sleeves. Half of his face is black. The other half is red. And this writer decided to show the side where he's looking one way, which only shows his black face, and he determined, or the black side of his face. So he determines, wait a second, he's got black on half of his face, and it's on his face. Wait, can we call this blackface? Can we call this racist?
Yep.
I don't care. I'm just going to do it anyway. And he, of course, is called down on it. He's attacking this poor kid, this child. The kid looks about 8 years old, trying to destroy his life. And he's called out on it and said, no, you completely lied about that picture. And he's doubling down on it and saying, well, it's still wrong and blah, blah, blah. And this is what they do. They will keep trying it because it usually works, even when they're called out on it. They still don't admit that they were lying.
Yeah, well, and the Clemson, South Carolina game, right? They said that Trump was booed.
Booed.
Boo, boo. And you go into the game and you see, I mean, that was probably like maybe 4 people. The one person like screaming into the camera right as Trump was up with the motorcade outside of the game. Maybe 4
like
people.
5 protesters. Yeah.
Yeah, that were probably paid by NBC or MSNBC to be there, but
And they were a lot, and you'd appreciate this as a radio person, they were probably a lot closer to the microphone of whoever was recording that. So anytime you can get 3 people to go right next to a mic and go, boo, really loudly. And it sounds like it's the whole crowd, But then when you get into a whole crowd, when the noise is dissipated, and you're right, Trump was cheered. Trump was applauded. They were like, yay, Trump.
Yeah, I know. Speaking about Trump being applauded, I do want to get to this. Trump is leading in the polls, like all of them. So unpack this for me, Mike Coolidge.
Wow. So Real Clear Politics, which is my go-to website for everything, really, because it is a great hub for the news of politics every single day. And yes, they put left of center stuff on there too, so it's somewhat balanced. And they do a poll of polls, and they have for 2 decades since their existence. So when you hear a Real Clear Politics poll, it's not just one poll, it's a meta poll of 8 or 9 of the respected journalism polls out there. Take them for whatever they're worth. Donald Trump is leading in the Real Clear Politics average of polls, Joe Biden, by over 2 points, and has been since September. And I know there's all the caveats to that. The election's a year away. They haven't even really started the campaigning yet. Who knows how the economy is going to be, blah, blah, blah. A week is an eternity in politics. All that's true. But historically, to see Trump beating the Democrat nominee, that's never happened for this length of time at all. Even in 2016, when he won, he was never leading in any of the Real Clear Politics average polls. But he was for like a very short period of time right after the Republican convention, the convention bounced. So the overall big takeaway of this is you see these people panicking on the left about Biden, and they're trying to do everything they can to change the narrative or even use, forcing the hand of these media companies as best they can, and publishers like Facebook and X to squash bad stories, blah, blah, blah. They're doing anything they can, in other words, to cheat, to rig the election in any way possible, because they know that Biden is so insanely unpopular, and they see Trump winning. And yes, we don't elect by national polls. We elect by states. Even in the states, the Electoral College, he's winning in Florida, Trump. Trump is winning in Ohio. Trump is winning in Pennsylvania. He's winning in Michigan, Wisconsin, a state he never was leading in at all in 2016, and he wound up winning it. He's winning now. And then I know another immediate thing that a lot of Trump supporters say is, well, the election's rigged, and why even vote, because they're going to rig it. It's different now. The 2024 election, the right has done so many things to make sure that ballots are counted by hand and have election judges in place in a lot of these states. Georgia has changed the way they monitor and count vote elections now. Arizona is, Wisconsin is. These states that Biden won, quote unquote, in 2020, they're not going to be able to do these same shenanigan election night tricks that they did as far as counting and blocking people from looking at the voter tolls and all that. If you can have any sense of optimism about 2024, if Trump is the nominee, and that's I'm supporting Trump in the primary. I mean, let's just put it out there now. It has to be Trump, because if it's another nominee, there are going to be a significant amount of Trump voters who don't trust the electoral system, and some of them have valid reasons to, and who are not going to vote. And you just need a couple 10,000 here, 10,000 there in different states. They're not going to vote in the general if Trump's not on the ballot, and Biden's going to win re-election. Trump is going to bring out so many more votes than any other candidate will. And I'm really optimistic about next year. And many things can change, obviously, but these polls show that Biden is really, really in bad shape, and Trump is looking in really good shape for next year.
Yeah, and you're so right. I think that there is actually a group of young people. Now, we talk about how you're Gen X, Gen Z, right? And screw the millennials, but no, not all of them, but they're a lost generation. I saw this USA Today. Speaking of polls, Joe Biden, 18 to 34, ages 18 to 34, he's at 42%. Compare that to Donald Trump, who led him with 46%. So I think that there's this
Unbelievable.
Gen Z young generation who is just so sick and tired of, and I was talking a lot about this because millennials and Thanksgiving, they do this thing. It's called Friendsgiving. And now I've done a couple of Friendsgivings before in addition to Thanksgiving. Okay. They have replaced Thanksgiving with Friendsgiving because they have no family. Like millennials,
A
they
lot
have,
of them don't.
yeah, a lot of them are just not all, and are definitely not our listeners, and they could probably attest to this better than I because there are demo 30 to 40, right? That a lot of their friends just are so lost. In fact, I even saw something called Hanksgiving, where they dress up as Tom Hanks, really
What?
childish, weird, and then they get together and they do this costume contest and things like that. But anyway, the millennials, I don't think Donald Trump is going to. I mean, he might actually be winning with those guys soon because what the millennials were always told are expectations. They expected to get out of college, have a nice job, have a family, and they said, hey, you can put off having a family, just go to college, get a job, make a bunch of money, and you'll have all of it. Right? They were lied to. You can't do that. You can't go into massive amounts of debts, go to college and pay that off. And they aren't where they're at. They aren't where they want to be. Millennials. So they were told that they were going to be at a certain place, and those expectations are not reality. And that's why they're the lost generation. But I didn't want to get into all of that. What I think is that maybe there will be this turning where these millennials and they start to realize the economic trouble that they're in and realize Trump is the only hope. That's why 18 to 34, that's why those young voters are choosing Trump, because they realize that they've been lied to, that their millennial parents have been trying to lie to them and say that, hey, just go to college and then you'll get a job, just go into this massive amount of debt. Trump is not lying to them. Trump is saying that we have to get it together. We have to have other countries pay their fair share, and we have to get the economy on track. And that's why I think he's just so popular amidst the 18 to 34-year-olds.
Yeah. And here's the thing about politics. You got your base, you got your people who are definitely going to go out and vote. And then you only need a couple of chunks of the other side actually, seeing the light, getting red pilled, if you will. Chunk of millennials, chunk of minority groups. Many of them are becoming more and more conservative, more and more Republican, loving Trump, Hispanics, blacks. More and more of them are becoming Republican and voting for Trump. All you need is just little chunks of them. You don't even need the majority of young people and different demographic groups. And you can win. You can win in landslides. And I'm not making that prediction yet. A lot of work to be done. A lot can happen, obviously. But as far as being positioned to win next year, Trump and Republicans in general are in a good position, in an enviable position, more so than Democrats for sure.
I love it. Well, Mike Coolidge, we have got to take a break. Go find him on Twitter, folks. That's Coolidge, Koolidge. DGE. And you can find him on Twitter. Thanks so much, Mike Coolidge, for joining me.
Take care, Kat.
All right, folks, we're going to be back on the other side talking a little bit about the assault weapons ban. And we're going to be talking with Dan Caulkins about that here next on The Buzz. Good morning, friends. Thanks so much for tuning in. I so do appreciate it. When we come back, we are going to be talking with Republican State Representative Dan Caulkins and how he petitioned the U.S. Supreme Court to review the state Supreme Court's ruling, their decision to uphold this unconstitutional, I believe, so-called assault weapons. And Dan Caulkins says that this chance that the U.S. Supreme Court is going to hear this, it's really because there's precedent. And that's what has caused the case to get onto the docket. David Paul had Dan Caulkins on this weekend, and we talked about it. So I'm very excited to have him on. Plus, later we will be talking about the McLean County Board and how they're going to be forced to change their public comment policy. And this is really embarrassing, if you ask me. So that's next on the Buzz. Earlier this morning, I was telling you guys about the McLean County government and how they're going to have to be forced to change this little public comment policy, finally. Shame on all of the McLean County board members for not drawing attention to this, but I didn't even know this was really the policy, and I'm just thinking to myself, man, these people are really against freedom of speech, against the First Amendment. The First Amendment says that you have the right to address grievances with your government, and you can do that through the form of public comment. Now, news broke yesterday, and I got this from BLN News. Shout out to Diane. She does incredible stories over there. I got this yesterday. Somebody filed, and they weren't named in the story, but they filed with the Illinois Attorney General's Public Access Division concerning McLean County government policies as it pertains to public comment. So right now, as the rule stands, you have to give them 24 hours notice if you want to speak. But that's not fair. So you shouldn't have to be required to give them any kind of warning that you are going to come speak and address the grievances with your government. But around everywhere, I mean, Normal, Bloomington, all you really need is 15 minutes prior before the meeting to sign up. And I don't know why we would have to require anything more than that. But get this, back in 2014, the county was actually found guilty. McLean County was found guilty of violating the Open Meetings Act when their policy, so their current policy is you have to give them 24 hours notice if you want to speak at public comment. But their policy back in 2014, get this, was if you wanted to speak, you had to sign up 5 days in advance. What? That's long before an agenda for that meeting is even posted. So I'm curious what the board members are going to do in response to this. I hope that all of the board members respect the rights of the citizens. And I'm curious what 10 Republicans and what 10 Democrats are going to speak out and say, hey, the citizens, they have the right to address their grievances with the board. So we're going to talk about that here coming up in just a little bit, but you know him, you love him. It's the Republican State Representative Dan Caulkins. So he's on the line with me, and I'm so excited to talk about your case because it's on the docket. So tell me what that means. What does it mean? The Illinois Supreme Court, it's on the docket. Does that mean for sure they're going to hear it? Tell our listeners about the so-called assault weapons ban possibly being heard by the United States Supreme Court.
Well, thank you, Kat. Good morning. It's great to be with you and your listeners. The on the docket means that they've received our filing. We made a pleading with them to please hear our case, and it's what they say at this point is that we received it. It's properly formatted. We've gone through all the steps to get it to their attention, and they're considering it. They've given Governor Pritzker until December 14th to respond as to why he thinks they should not hear our case. If he wants to, he's not required to respond. And then I guess they're going to take it up as a group. And I believe 4 of the justices have to agree to hear a case. So it's really the first step. An encouraging thing did happen, though. It's the very next day after they put it on the docket, the U.S. Supreme Court sent a notice to the Illinois Supreme Court asking them for all of their files, for the whole case file. it does, that was like 24 hours after they put it on the docket, which is very rare. So we're encouraged. We're encouraged that someone at the U.S. Supreme Court is at least one of the justices, if not more, is interested in our case. So doesn't mean they're going to hear it, but we're certainly encouraged.
And tell me why they're interested. So I was telling our listeners a little bit about this court precedent, why the United States Supreme Court might be taking a look at this case.
And it's really not just an Illinois issue, and I think that's why they may be interested. Our case, we're asking them to review, concerns the ability to get a fair hearing in the Illinois Supreme Court on a gun case. In our lawsuit against Governor Pritzker and the rest of the leaders of the General Assembly, we took that through the Illinois court system and had a hearing at the Illinois Supreme Court. We believe that we didn't get a fair hearing. We didn't get a fair trial. And we said that for three reasons. One, the two justices of the court out of 7 that heard our case had received $1 million from Governor Pritzker in their campaign for the Illinois Supreme Court. They had received hundreds of thousands of dollars from the legislative branch. And as you pointed out earlier last week, it's now been discovered that the state Senate president, his lawyer, had a secret super PAC who funneled another millions of dollars into these two candidates' quest to get on the Supreme Court. So what we're saying is that the two other branches of government have essentially put a lot of money into the campaign funds of these two justices. Mm-hmm. And the appearance of their bias, just the appearance is wrong. The other thing that we claim is that they were endorsed and accepted the endorsement of two anti-Second Amendment groups who were very active in the campaign, working on behalf of these two judges to get them elected to the Illinois Supreme Court. And after the election, both of these organizations were really loud and proud on social media about the success in getting their two candidates, anti-Second Amendment candidates, elected to the Illinois Supreme Court. And everyone has a right, First Amendment right to speech. And if you've ever been to a gathering where a judge candidate speaks, they have a right to speak. But they're all very cautious about how they talk about cases that could be heard in their courtrooms. But when it goes so far as to what happened in these two Supreme Court campaigns, we think that shows that these two judges could, the appearance of bias.
Yeah, well,
and that goes to the case. It's the appearance. We don't have to prove that they were biased, because as you talked about earlier, the Caperton case is the precedent that we're filing under.
Yeah, and what that says, it says that, look, it requires judges to recuse themselves not only when actual bias has been demonstrated or when a judge has an economic interest in the outcome of the case, when extreme facts create a probability of bias. I don't know about you, Dan, but $1 million each plus more from the other branch of government, the legislative branch of government. That sounds like extreme facts to me.
Well, I think if you asked any reasonable person, a man on the street, if you knew that a judge had been given $1 million, over millions of dollars from defendants in a lawsuit, that judge would be impartial.
Yeah.
Just the appearance. I mean, do you think that judge could be impartial? And I don't think any really logical thinking person would say, "Oh yeah, no, I don't think so."
Yeah. Well,
Um,
and then Caperton,
Caperton.
Caperton. It was just $1,000, I think, that a judge received in that case, and the decision there was that, hey, judges need to recuse themselves, and it was just $1,000 in that case, wasn't it?
Right. That was a case in, I believe, 1999, where a judge had received $1,000 from the defendant, and also there was other campaign money expended by the defendant's PAC to get that judge elected. And Mr. Caperton didn't feel like that he'd gotten a fair trial, and it went all the way to the U.S. Supreme Court, and they said yes, there was this bias, the appearance of bias, if you don't have to prove that the judge was biased. And that's where the U.S. Supreme Court set this precedent up. Mm-hmm. And that's what we're using in our case here in Illinois.
Very exciting. Well, and I do want to talk about your case and what was actually heard by the Illinois Supreme Court, because a lot of people think, and I think that you did argue the Second Amendment to an extent, but really what the beauty of it was this 14th Amendment thing where the law has to be equally applied to all. And it's not. That was very clear when I went to the Joliet Christmas parade. I saw a police officer with an AR-15 strapped to his chest, and you can't have an AR-15. My brother goes, oh, he's got an AR-15. I thought those were banned. And I go, see, the law doesn't apply equally, John, to anybody, to citizens. The cops get to have the AR-15s, but you don't. And that was the beauty of your case. I think that it was genius. I think that your attorney, all the credit to him. Now, one thing I did want to read, somebody was texting me back and forth here on the text line, and I want to kind of press you on this, Dan. They said that read the Illinois Supreme Court case, Cat. Caulkins' case was not prepared. It showed point by point on stuff he didn't prove in his rush to try and be the one who got it overturned. Proper prior planning prevents poor performance. The 6 P's of management. So that was a text we got on our text line. I don't know. I think that you were playing a little bit of 4D chess. So explain your case a little bit for our listeners, to try to describe to them, that you went into this knowing that they weren't going to rule based off the Second Amendment, like a Second Amendment case with the Illinois Supreme Court. I mean, the majority rules, right? And they're all anti-Second Amendment, and that was clear.
Everyone who has taken a Second Amendment case to the Illinois court system has been bounced. They have said, no, that's a federal. Second Amendment is a federal case, and they've sent them to the federal side. So there's no Second Amendment case has ever been tried in the state court system. They refuse to hear that, first of all. Secondly, there's 2 ways to go about attacking this unconstitutional law. And your friend texting is obviously a follower of Tom DeVore and believes everything Tom says, and they're perfectly okay to do that. But the reality of it is that our case was done differently than Tom's, deliberately done differently than Tom's, because if we'd have done the same case that Tom had done, we'd have been consolidated. Our case would have been held up. Tom wants to take depositions and go on and on and on for years and years, and it wasn't the way we wanted to approach things. We approached things in a different manner. We said we went after it for a 14th Amendment, equal protection, and all we had to show was that people who were similarly circumstanced, who were lawful citizens, were not given the same Second Amendment rights as other people. Mm-hmm. And just as a little analogy, I've 22 years of military experience. I think I probably spent a lot more time around semi-automatic and automatic weapons than most deputy sheriffs and police officers and prison guards and state police officers in their careers. And yet I'm denied my Second Amendment right. And no way to get it. And there's no way for me to get my Second Amendment rights back other than to join a police force or re-enlist in the military. And that was the case we made. Our case was heard in Macon County at the district court level, the state district court level. Our judge decided, after hearing both sides, that we were right, that this law is unconstitutional. It violates our 14th Amendment rights.
Mm-hmm.
There was no rush. The case then, if the governor and the attorney general had not taken the case to the Illinois Supreme Court, which was the only place they could take it, because this is a constitutional case, an Illinois constitutional case. They go right over the appellate court. It goes right to the Illinois Supreme Court.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what happened. And a normal course of time and action. And if any of those people think that they're going to get a fair hearing on a gun bill in front of the Illinois Supreme Court, I've got a bridge for them here in Decatur that I'd like to sell them.
Yeah, well, and here's the thing too. The United States Supreme Court, I think, and this is purely speculation, but you are very, very close. Docket right with, they could possibly hear this case. I don't know. If I was a United States Supreme Court justice, and I'm not, I would be looking at this case and I'd be like, okay, obviously the U.S. Supreme Court, they've got all kinds of Second Amendment cases, New York, California, all kinds of things that deal with the Second Amendment. Your case specifically looks at the 14th Amendment. So this, you have removed this very controversial issue. I don't know why it's controversial, because the Constitution is pretty flippin' clear, shall not be infringed, but you have kind of removed this controversy, and the judges in the Illinois Supreme Court still ruled against you, which proves that they must have had some sort of bias, some economic interest to uphold this law for Governor J.B. Pritzker, Kwame Raoul, and the like. Right? So,
So here, if you, not you, but if people are very interested in this, go read the decision from the Illinois Supreme Court and look at what they actually wrote. Look at what they actually wrote and how they were very, very cautious and circumspect in how they ruled on this case. And they claim Second Amendment, this and that. The Second Amendment is in our case because my Second Amendment, all of our Second Amendment rights are being violated because we aren't given the same consideration as other people to exercise our freedom.
mm-hmm.
That's how the Second Amendment affects this case. Our case at the U.S. Supreme Court is, yes, there's the 14th Amendment, but the real crux of our case is that these two judges should have recused themselves.
Yes.
These two judges should have recused themselves and not even heard this case.
Mm-hmm.
So let's do the math. And here's why that's important. There are 7 judges in the Illinois Supreme Court. It takes 4 judges to overturn a prior verdict. So we had a verdict in Macon County in the district court that said that this law is facially unconstitutional. Facially is a legal definition. For your friends out there, go look it up. You get a legal dictionary, look up the word facially and what it means. And I'll give you a clue. It means for everyone. It was facially unconstitutional. If the Illinois Supreme Court had agreed with our district court, this law would have been wiped out for everyone, not just for me, not just for Perry Lewin, not just for the members of our little informal group here, but for everyone in the state of Illinois. Facially unconstitutional. We won that. The Illinois Supreme Court had to have 4 votes to overturn our verdict in Macon County. There are 5 Democrats on that court and 2 Republicans.
Mm-hmm.
If the 2 Democrat judges had recused themselves, there would have been 3 Democrats and 2 Republicans. 3 Democrats cannot overturn our judgment in Macon County, and the law would have been overturned and deemed unconstitutional for everyone, facially unconstitutional in the state of Illinois. And that's why it's so important that we get these 2 judges recused and get them off this case.
Yes. Well, Dan Caulkins, we've got to take a break, but I so do appreciate you unpacking the case and how it could potentially be heard by the U.S. Supreme Court. We'll know more by December 14th. That's correct?
I hope so, yes. So 14th, 15th, 16th, somewhere after the 14th. We hope soon after. We'll see what happens. We're keeping our fingers crossed, Kat. We're hopeful that they'll take up our case, because it not just applies to the Illinois Supreme Court, but there's other courts across the land in this country where people may not feel like they get a fair hearing because of the way their judges are, their campaigns are financed.
Yep.
So this could have broad implications all across the country, just like the Caperton case does.
Very exciting. And thank you so much, Dan Caulkins. We're going to be back, folks, on the other side. It's Cities 92.9. Good morning. Hey, you can see me live in studio. That's YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, and Rumble. And Nathan, he sent me over this, and I've just got to bring this up because I've never noticed this before. So, Little Miss Sunbeam, and the meaning behind the Sunbeam Bread's holiday packaging. So, for over 6 decades, so 60 years, Sunbeam Bread. It's a product of the Quality Bakers of America. So for 60 years about has been more than just a staple at the kitchen dinner table, at the dinner table. It's a heartwarming display of tradition and reflection, and the company undergoes this little subtle but powerful transformation in its marketing strategy just after Thanksgiving each year. So there's this little iconic little girl on Little Miss Sunbeam, and she's usually eating a piece of bread with a pad of butter on it. But it's Little Miss Sunbeam. Okay, and I buy Little Miss Sunbeam. Sometimes I'm not much of a bread person. I try to stay away from the carbs, but uh Little Miss Sunbeam, I'm telling you, that is my addiction. That is my favorite bread. And this is an iconic picture of Little Miss Sunbeam bowing her head in prayer, and it's accompanied by this image is accompanied by this quote from Jesus Christ in Matthew chapter 4, verse 4, and the quote is "Not by bread alone." So this is an annual switch, and they've been doing this, I guess, for 60 years, and I've never even noticed it. That just goes to show you got to get out of your bubble a little bit. But this is a switch that marks it really just marks Sunbeam's commitment to acknowledging the deeper significance of the holiday season. And it just goes beyond the mere act of breaking bread. Okay, so I just absolutely love this. They've been doing it for 60 years, and I had no idea that they've been doing it. But thank you, Nathan, for passing that on to me. Sunbeam bread. Who knew? They changed the image of the little girl on the bread from her eating a slice of bread with a pat of butter on it to her bowing her head in prayer. And it just is a good reminder that, this is the season, but there is a reason for the season. And 60 years Sunbeam has been doing that. So we talked a lot about BLN News, the story that broke with McLean County government policies pertaining to public comment. They're probably going to have to change that stuff. That right now they want you to give 24 hours notice if you want to speak. That's their current policy, but turns out they might actually be forced to change that to reflect most other municipalities around the area. They require you to be there like 15 minutes before the meeting and sign up. Look, it's your First Amendment right. Your First Amendment right to address your grievances with the government, and you should be able to do that with ease. So we talked with Dan Caulkins this morning. Coming up, I do want to talk a little bit about the White House reporter who interrupts question about Stevie Wonder. So White House reporters, they actually interrupt with laughter. Other reporters. This one reporter questions Kiran Jean-Pierre about Stevie Wonder and asks her if Stevie Wonder will meet, or if Joe Biden will meet with Stevie Wonder to talk about the Black community. So I got to talk about this. And Eric Swalwell, he's in the news. He is kissing Joe Biden's butt, and he's sounding off this alarm about how Donald Trump would be bad for the Middle East if he were to be in office currently. And I can't believe what Eric Swalwell says. I've got the tape. So we'll roll that out for you here on the Buzz. And I've got to tell you about the White House press meeting briefing yesterday. This reporter asks Kiran Jean-Pierre if Stevie Wonder is going to meet with Joe Biden. Look, the left, they've made it very clear that they feel like they're entitled to every Black vote, and they don't deserve it. They don't deserve it. So election season is right a corner, and that means Democrats are going to start virtue signaling their butts off in an attempt to hold on to the minority votes, as the left is actually screaming about things nobody really cares about. So yesterday's press briefing, that's next. Good morning. Thanks so much for tuning in. I so do appreciate it. If you're watching, go ahead and smash the like button. We're going to come back and we're going to talk about Eric Swalwell. Eric Swalwell, he's a Democrat, and he asked everybody to just imagine what the scenario in the Middle East would be like if Donald Trump was back in the White House. And I don't really have to imagine, because what was the Middle East like from 2017 to 2021? Eric Swalwell. But you guys are going to lose your mind about this. Then we're also going to chat a little bit about this White House reporter. She actually interrupts with a question about Stevie Wonder. And this question is so ridiculous. The other reporters actually laughed at her in the press briefing. So we're going to chat about it all here on the Morning Buzz. If you're watching, go ahead and smash the like button. Share this out with your normie friends. It's very important. And Derek Chauvin, he is a loose end. And I talked a lot about that this morning, how Derek Chauvin is a loose end, and they know that he didn't kill George Floyd, and the regime has to tie up this loose end. I want to know who stabbed Derek Chauvin. Will we ever get that answer? Probably not. That's all next here on The Buzz. Eric Swalwell, he's kissing Joe Biden's butt, and he's sounding the alarm about Donald Trump and the Middle East. He's trying to say that Donald Trump, if he were to be president today, that things would be much worse in the Middle East. You can't make this stuff up. Plus, this White House reporter, she interrupts the press briefing yesterday with this odd question about Stevie Wonder. This is such a weird question, and it's so ridiculous that the other reporters in the press briefing room actually laughed at this reporter. Of course, it's April Ryan, so we're going to have to chat a little bit about all of this here on The Buzz. You can always text me at 309-451-9299, or you can see me live in studio. That's YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, and Rumble. So ever since Joe Biden took office, we've seen an increase in gas prices. We've seen inflation just skyrocketing, millions of people illegally entering the United States through what I believe to be an intentionally open border, Russia's invasion of Ukraine, and of course, the brutal Hamas attack, the terrorist attack on October 7th in Israel several weeks ago. So the card the Democrats are trying to play now is, wow, just imagine how bad things would be if Trump were president, or how awful the situation will get if he gets another term or is elected next November. Okay, so that's their card. That's the card that the Democrats are playing right now. Eric Swalwell, he crawled out of his little hidey hole. I didn't even realize this guy still existed. He crawled out of his hidey hole to say something on MSNBC, of course. That just makes no sense. It makes no sense. So Democrat Eric Swalwell, he asked everybody to just imagine what the scenario in the Middle East would be like with Donald Trump back in the White House. So let's take a listen. Here we go.
Would you like to see the United States doing more to pressure Prime Minister Netanyahu to take more steps to reduce civilian casualties?
Yes, well, first, President Biden has done that, and I also like to step back when I see some of the heat President Biden is taking and think, what would the alternative be if Donald Trump was reelected, or if Donald Trump was president at this time? Can you imagine what the scenario would be in the Middle East? It would probably be the United States and Israel in a World War III-like scenario with Iran, Hezbollah, and Hamas. President Biden has not sent a single American into the conflict, but he is now pulling American hostages out of the conflict. We're supporting Israel. We're getting aid into the region. So far, we've held off other enemies of Israel and America. That's why President Biden was elected, and that's why I think he needs to be given, the room to negotiate, what is ultimately a resolution to this conflict.
What? Seriously? There's no need to imagine what it would be like. What was the Middle East like from 2017 to 2021? You don't have to imagine. Donald Trump presided over this historic period of peace in the Middle East. We know what the Democrats think. If you have a problem figuring out whether you're for Biden or for Trump, then you ain't black. Okay, so I do want to switch gears and we're going to talk about this press briefing. I just had to share with you really quick about Eric Swalwell. And what are you talking about, dude? We don't have to imagine. We had historic peace in the Middle East from 2017 to 2021, the only president to not start any kind of wars. And the Uniparty didn't like that. That's why that's why they stole the election. I'll get to that here coming up in just a little bit. I might just drag out the 60th anniversary of the assassination of JFK, which, a lot of us are scratching our heads. How did the country get here? Well, I'll point you to the day where it all went to hell in a handbasket. It was the assassination of JFK. That is when they said, "Hey, we cannot deal with a populist president. We don't want we don't think that the people should be able or could and should and could elect somebody, a populist president who doesn't want to get us into any kind of new wars. That's not good for the Uniparty. That's not good for the people sitting on Boeing boards. That's not good for the people who have stock in defense defense ammunitions or helicopters. So I'm going to be chatting a little bit about that maybe in just a little bit. But first, I do want to get to this. We all know Democrats think this, quote, and I'm quoting Joe Biden here: "If you have a problem figuring out whether you're for Biden or for Trump, you ain't black." That was a direct quote from the puppet in chief, Joe Biden. Now it's election season and it's right around the corner, folks, the election. That means Democrats are starting to virtue signal their butts off in an attempt to hold onto this minority vote that is slipping away from them. And the leftists, they're just continuing to scream about things nobody cares about. So this was shown in yesterday's press briefing that they are just trying to virtue signal their butts off to try to keep this black vote because they're losing it. The far left reporter April Ryan asked Karen Jean-Pierre, who is black and lesbian, if President Joe Biden would be open to meeting with Stevie Wonder to discuss his concerns with the administration regarding the, quote, black agenda and how the black agenda is falling along the wayside. So that's what her direct quote is. Obviously, her very serious statement from April Ryan was interrupted by others laughing at her really odd train of thought. So the reporters laughed at her. April Ryan asked this ridiculous question about Stevie Wonder. The left has made it very clear that they feel entitled to every single black vote, and they don't deserve it. The left does not deserve the vote. Okay, I'm just going to say that. So here's the exchange. Here's April Ryan asking this ridiculous question and her being interrupted.
I love Stevie Wonder. Again, for the serious question, I had an in-depth conversation with Stevie Wonder last night, who is requesting a meeting with the president. He's very concerned about the black agenda falling along the wayside and issues like laws of 50 years ago that are now being abolished or gutted, to include issues like the Voting Rights Act, what happened in Arkansas last week, affirmative action, Supreme Court, we've seen it, ban on books, and he's also even brought up issues of the Congo and the lack of information from the White House. Is the White House amenable to sitting down with Stevie Wonder, who has met with presidents throughout history, to include Ronald Reagan? He was one of the major impetus for getting the holiday for Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. And also he was one of those who worked with President Obama in his efforts to become president. Is this president amenable to meeting with Stevie Wonder, who has these concerns?
And you're right, April, what you just laid out in your question is incredibly important. And so we take that very, very seriously here. Can I just say a couple things about Stevie Wonder? He is indeed an icon who's made tremendous contributions to the civil rights movement and also voting rights. And as you just listed out, he was one of the main voices in getting Dr. Martin Luther King Day, and we appreciate that. We appreciate his brilliance, and we appreciate what he's been able to do on behalf of the community. So I can't, as far as a meeting with the president, certainly I'm not aware of any meetings with Mr. Wonder or any scheduled meetings, and I don't have anything to announce, obviously, at this time. But I also want to say that on the president's first day in this administration, he has taken this very seriously as it relates to what we're seeing, right, as it relates to racial inequality. He called it one of the 4 major crises that we have to deal with as a country when he.
All right, I gotta stop that. I'm gonna lose my marbles. Obviously, Wonder is not seeing the big picture here. Stevie Wonder is blind. But Carol Jean-Pierre, she obviously responded to this this reference that April Ryan made. She said that Joe Biden has this inability to secure new voting legislation, and she also made reference to the ban on affirmative action in college admissions decisions. The United States Supreme Court upheld that. They said that affirmative action is racist. And, they put a ban on affirmative action. Then Ryan referred, of course, to the new voting legislation that would ban voter ID because apparently Black people can't get an ID, and it would be racist for us to require voter ID. And then she made mention and noted that Stevie Wonder met with the president, Ronald Reagan, and that he was had a major role in getting the holiday for Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. So Karen Jean-Pierre, she responds, and everybody's just so serious at the White House, very seriously. We take this very seriously, very seriously. It's just so odd. And that said, this is what I call soft bigotry, which is a form of prejudice that is mostly a characteristic of liberals. Okay, they are soft bigots. Okay, not blatant bigots, but they have something called soft bigotry. So according to Ryan, she made reference to all of these things. She said that it was important for Black voters to get special treatment to get into college, something that the United States Supreme Court has spoke about or has made a decision about. And then on top of that, she also implied that Black people are not competent enough to get an ID to vote. Okay, so that's soft bigotry coming from April Ryan, and it's a characteristic of leftists, of liberals. Stevie Wonder is not actually looking at anything, and a press briefing is not the place to schedule such meetings. Okay, I don't think that he actually cares. I think that April Ryan was doing this virtue signaling thing about Stevie Wonder because people like him, and don't get me wrong, I like Stevie Wonder. I like his music. This was a virtue signaling type thing that was going on at the White House press briefing because they know that they have to hold on to this minority vote. So they're going to do everything they can to virtue signal. They're going to drag out the token Black guy, Stevie Wonder, and they're going to try to use him. They're going to say, hey, is Joe Biden open to meeting with Stevie Wonder? Because they're trying to run this PR campaign, this public relations campaign with the Black community. Because look, folks, the leftists, the left Democrats, they don't deserve the Black vote. They do nothing for the Black community, and they're incredibly racist. I call it soft bigotry because it's not as blatant, but April Ryan here suggests in one breath that Black people cannot get an ID. And then she also suggests that they can't get into college without some sort of special treatment like affirmative action. That's racist. According to a recent survey, only 14% of voters say that Joe Biden has made them better off. And 82% of them said that their biggest financial stress was the price increases that come with this overwhelming inflation, this Bidenflation. But don't let that get in the way, folks. Don't let that all get in the way of the real issues at hand. Who cares about the economy when we can have the Black agenda that it's falling along the wayside or whatever she said? I mean, who cares about the economy when we've got the Black agenda, whatever that means? Hopefully, because everyone is taking this so seriously, racism will finally be solved once and for all. But like Carol Jean-Pierre said, she's taking this very seriously. He takes this incredibly seriously. of the president, the Black agenda, the opportunities for the communities, blah, blah, blah. So, yeah, I had to bring that up. I thought that was a bizarro question coming from April Ryan. And also I had to point out the soft bigotry exhibited by April Ryan in the press briefing room. So I'll be back on the other side. A few things that I want to chat about. Speaking about Bidenflation, I do want to talk about this TikTok video on Bidenomics. It's got the Biden team very, very flustered. In fact, they want to censor this TikTok video. They want to label it misinformation. And then a little bit later, I do want to talk about this actress. She's a Jewish actress, and she's wondering where all the feminists are at because she's this leftist. Traditionally, she's always been a leftist, BIALIK. And she's wondering where all the feminists are and why they're not condemning the rape and torture done by Hamas. And she's a Jewish actress. So we're going to chat a little bit about her next on The Buzz. Good morning. Thanks so much for tuning in. I so do appreciate it. MAYIM BIALIK. BIALIK. She is wondering where all of the feminists are, and she is a feminist herself. She's marched with the leftists. She's a big BLM activist. She was a big feminist, and now she is wondering where all the feminists are when it comes to condemning the rape and torture done by Hamas. And this is a really, it's emotional. This is an emotional story, but it's important because there's a lot of people out there who, you know, they're shocked that leftists aren't coming and, saying, me too when it comes to the Jewish women who are being raped. So, like many Jewish progressives, post October 7th, actress Mayim uh, Bialik, I'm going to fix that, is wondering where the social justice peers are on the left. I'm back here on the buzz. Good morning. This is the Morning Buzz. Thanks so much for tuning in. I so do appreciate it. Go ahead and find us on cities929.com. There's a few things I'm going to tell you about, some housekeeping things. Show us your game 2023. I love it. I'm so excited for for you to submit your pictures. I get to look at all of them. We randomly select and notify one winner on December 29th. So we've teamed up with Bloomington Meats and Quinn's Skull Taxidermy for Show Us Your Game 2023. So it's real simple. You just go to cities929.com. You submit a picture of yourself with your game, with your deer, your buck, your pheasant, whatever the case may be, your duck. And you get a chance to win one free deer processing from Bloomington Meats and a $100 gift card to Quinn's Skulls Taxidermy. So go ahead and visit cities929.com and submit a picture of yourself. Submit one on our website, and you guys get to win all kinds of cool prizes. Another quick thing I wanted to let you guys know about was support our seniors. You can donate gifts this holiday season right to our studios. I'd love to see you. I donate puzzles every year, but we've got all kinds of items that we need for our seniors. Seniors staying in long-term care facilities. They often suffer from things like loneliness, especially around the holidays. So this Christmas season, we've teamed up with the McLean County Nursing Home to bring the residents things like body wash, body spray, lotions, socks, puzzles, books. So anything, there's a printable wish list on our website, that's cities929.com. You can even make a monetary donation if you would like. And we go to the McLean County Nursing Home and we drop off all of your donations, Great Plains Media. So come to Great Plains Media. You can drop off your donations here at 108 Boykins Place in Normal. I'd love to see you. And your donations can be made, a monetary donation can be made on cities929.com. Okay, so we got all of that out of the way. I do want to get to this story. Mayim Bialik. She's a Jewish actress. Now, I don't watch her in a whole lot, but I do keep up with her Twitter because I find it interesting. Like most Jewish progressives post October 7th, actress Mayim Bialik, she is wondering where all her social justice peers are at. Her social justice peers on the left are. Where are they? She is a progressive. She is a Jewish woman, and she's an actress. She has a pretty large following on X Twitter. Now, she was there to say Black Lives Matter, believe all women, and Me Too. Okay, this Bialik woman, she's very much a leftist, and she was marching with women, and she was marching with Black Lives Matter. Yet after the terrorist attack, where Hamas raped and tortured Jewish women and children, by the way, there has been a whole lot of silence, unless it's, supporting terrorists. There have been a lot of pro-Palestinian rallies. Even here at the campus, Illinois State University, we had college students and young people laying on the floor saying, "From the river to the sea, Palestine will be free," and they wanted the local Democrats here in the community to come see them at the Bone Student Center, laying down with their signage. But I found this interesting video on Twitter, and then I'm going to get back to MAYIM BIALIK. I'm going to get back to what she had to say on X, but this is a really it's tough to get through. But it's a video circulating on X, and I think you guys are going to like it because it's tough to get through, but it makes a great point. Here we go.
I'd like to. I was raped.
So sorry. We're here to help. Tell us what happened.
I was at a music festival. We heard gunfire and everyone was running. I started running, and then he grabbed me. He yelled something in Arabic, and then he ripped my...
Sorry to interrupt you. You said he was yelling in Arabic.
Yes. So he ripped my pants, and then he
I'm just sorry, I just need a bit of background here. Are you Israeli?
Yes.
And your rapist was Palestinian?
He was a Hamas terrorist.
Okay, just, this is a bit awkward, but we can't help you.
But I was raped.
Do you have any proof?
Yes, he filmed it.
Yes, hello, local police.
Don't take it personally. Management decided that all violence against Israelis is legitimate resistance. So sorry.
My daughter has been kidnapped. Please help.
Sure, just before we get started, are either of you Israeli?
On October 7th, a mass terror.
So that was a video, and it's been circulating on Twitter, and I just found it interesting. It's obviously a fictitious video where she goes in, the rape victim, and she says, "I've been raped," and then the police, they're supposed to be taking the report, they're supposed to help her, and then they find out she's Israeli, and they're like, sorry, we can't help you." What? Well, management has told us that we can't help Israeli people because they're Israeli. So yeah, I want to get back to this Jewish actress. Her name is BIALIK. BIALIK. I think I'm saying that correctly, but she dropped a tweet, and she's calling on all of these global women's organizations, and she's saying, "Hey, break your silence." Okay, most notably, the UN Women. So the United Nations entity for gender equality and the empowerment of women. This was an organization. It's a global organization, and it actually took them, folks, 50 days to mention the attacks, and the most they could muster up was that they were alarmed. That they were alarmed by the terrorist attack that was committed by Hamas terrorists on October 7th. So that's all the UN Women, the United Nations entity for gender equality and empowerment of women. This is a global organization. 50 days after the attack, they came out and they said, well, we were alarmed by the attack. Like Joe Biden and the White House, they must have been distracted by all of the Islamophobia. But here is what the actress says. She says, "Brutal gang rape, sexual torture, and murder of fetuses are happening, period," she declares on X. And then she says, "Where are the believe them voices? These crimes against women were in many cases documented by the terrorists themselves and broadcasted for the world to see." Yes, so the Hamas terrorists, they were filming the rapes and posting them online. Most of us who have fought for women's rights and have sought to shout from the rooftops when women's bodies are used in war for sadistic pleasure, for the sadistic pleasure of the perpetrators. And I'm astounded how the world has been silent surrounding this. So, like I said, this actress who said this on Twitter is actually a profound leftist. She's seen marching with Black Lives Matter. She's seen at women's marches. She's a feminist. So she released this video last month, and she was, she said that she was shocked by the anti-Semitism that she's seeing in these activist communities. So this Netflix star, her name is Sheila Nazarian. So she is also a Jewish actress. She's a Netflix star. She has a show or whatever, and she responded with her own video, and she's wondering how this BIALIK, this actress, can be so surprised. She said, "Why are you surprised?" She says, "They've been open and honest about their anti-Semitism for as long as I could count," right? And this Sheila woman is saying that the left has always been anti-Semitic. You didn't have your eyes open. So let's take a listen.
I just finished watching MAYIM BIALIK's recent post about how she sees things, and it took October 7th for her to see things. And I'm just so, I don't know. I don't understand why it has taken so long for people to see what a lot of us have been screaming for the last 4 years, especially, and I hate to say it, especially the progressive Jews in America. You thought marching with these leftist organizations meant that you were one of them and that they supported you. You failed to read the charter of Black Lives Matter that had anti-Semitism written in it from the beginning. You failed to notice the anti-Semitism at the women's marches by Linda Sarsour on stage, one of the people on the board of the Women's March. You failed to listen. You failed to see. And what, now you see? Now you're awake? You're disappointed in the world. I'm disappointed in you.
Oof, that is that is shattering. So she calls out these Jewish progressives and she goes, "How did you not see this? How did you not see that the two biggest Democrat Party Hollywood virtue signaling progressive movements of the past 10 years were the Women's March and Black Lives Matter?" And this woman, MAYIM BIALIK, she failed to see this. And I don't know how she didn't see this, but these were the two biggest anti-Semitic Democrat Party virtue signaling progressive movements. It's the Women's March and Black Lives Matter. They were both run and organized by anti-Semites, like the Women's March and Black Lives Matter. This is who the left has always been. This is what the United Nations has become. It's the Joe Biden White House. And when conservatives attempted to point that out all this time, they were labeled racists, sexists, and homophobes. Okay, they've tried to point out that they are all bigots and that they are all anti-Semites here in these two biggest, especially the Women's March and the Black Lives Matter movements. Those were run and organized by anti-Semites. So I do want to take a quick break, but when we come back, we're going to be talking a little bit about McLean County. McLean County is going to be forced to change their public comment policy probably. And this is kind of embarrassing. And I hate to say it, but McLean County, what's with this policy, man? I just don't get why you thought this was a good policy to have. And I'm glad that somebody is finally breaking their silence, and they're saying, you know what, I'm going to file this complaint with the Illinois Attorney General's Public Access Division concerning this public comment policy. So I'm back next on the buzz. Good morning. Thanks so much for tuning in. If you're watching, go ahead and smash the like button. We're going to be back in just a little bit. Let's go ahead and read some of your comments. The left sucks people into playing on their feelings by playing on their feelings. Oh, the left sucks people in by playing on their feelings. Yes. Useful idiots are a dime and a dozen. We're going to be back talking a little bit about McLean County. If you're watching, go ahead and like, love, share this out with your friends. We're back. Here we go. Derek Chauvin, he's a loose end, folks. He's a loose end, stabbed in prison. And let me tell you why Derek Chauvin is such an issue for the regime. Chauvin is a loose end. Here's the issue. Derek Chauvin did not murder George Floyd. They know that. The regime knows that. If Floyd was murdered, he was murdered by himself by overdosing on fentanyl. Now, we saw the video, and America decided to place blame and cast blame on Derek Chauvin, and he was sacrificed in order for the mass election fraud to take place. In 2020, the color revolution was sparked by George Floyd's death, and that gave cover to a stolen election. Now that all the passion and the anger has faded away, Chauvin is a loose end. And they're trying to tie up that loose end, the regime is. And I don't think it's a coincidence, folks. I don't really believe in coincidence. There's no conspiracy theories. There's just coincidences. Am I right? This is a curious coincidence that this new George Floyd documentary came out just prior, I think like a day or two prior to him getting stabbed, Derek Chauvin. This documentary, it's called The Fall of Minneapolis. And the documentary actually shows you how agents in Washington, D.C. worked to alter the autopsy. They worked to edit the autopsy. Why? Because they wanted to make sure Derek Chauvin took the blame, because if he took the blame, he would be the sacrifice and they could steal the election. He's innocent. Okay. Derek Chauvin, I don't know what his life is like outside of this, but he surely and definitely is innocent of the murder of George Floyd, and the regime is tying up a loose end. Before we took the break, I was telling you a little bit about McLean County. McLean County, I guess that their public comment policy is where I didn't even know this. You have to give them 24 hours notice if you want to speak. That's wild. That's so against the First Amendment and freedom of speech. First Amendment says that you get to address your grievances with your government, but somebody, and this story broke here, BLN News, somebody who was not named in the story, filed with the Illinois Attorney General's Public Access Division. What's the Public Access Division? It's the only good thing in Illinois. The Public Access Division despises units of government that have printed policies that obviously violate your First Amendment rights. So they're kind of a checks and balances here. And if you remember, the town of Normal was actually forced numerous times to change their policy. The Public Access Division forced those changes after citizens had filed multiple complaints. But now it's the county's turn. People who wish to speak should not be required to submit some sort of approval 24 hours prior to the meeting. Most municipalities require you to sign up 15 minutes before the meeting. I don't see an issue really with that. If we're going to be free speech absolutists, then we should just allow people to walk up and say something if they want. And I don't think that you should be required to give your name or address or nothing. I don't think that that's fair. You should be able to address your government at any time, and there should be no stipulations placed on you. But get this, back in 2014, the county was actually found guilty. McLean County was found guilty of violating the Open Meetings Act when their policy actually required people wishing to speak up to 5 days in advance. So they had to give notice 5 days in advance. That's long before an agenda for a McLean County board meeting would even be posted. And yeah, that's incredible. And I think it's going to be fun to see 10 Democrats, 10 Republicans, how they respond to this filing. And I hope that all the county board members, that they respect the rights of the citizens and they listen to the people. Because make no mistake, all of these policy changes and all of this policy that they have, it is designed and it's purposefully put there to try to get you to not speak out against the government in any kind of way. They want these meetings to be very quick. They don't want any kind of public comment. And that's why they have restrictions on when you can speak. So that's that. I can't wait to see what happens. It's going to be interesting. So stay tuned. I'll stay tuned to that story and go check out the full story on blnnews.com. Now, I do also want to chat about Joe Biden and his administration, his team. They are trying to take down a TikTok video. Yes, because the TikTok video is of a man, and he bought this double quarter pounder meal at McDonald's, and he just shares a video of the receipt, and he gives the proof of how much this meal actually costed him, and it's been circulating online. It went viral, and the Biden team is trying to, they're working overtime, and they're trying to label this as misinformation. We're going to be back talking a bit about that. That's next on the Morning Buzz. Good morning. Thanks so much for tuning in. And if you're watching, go ahead and smash the like button. A senior Pentagon official, this is a huge story. And of course, mainstream is not picking it up. I saw Fox News picked it up. This is the New York Post. A senior Pentagon official who oversaw federally operated school systems in the Americas has been arrested in Georgia in a human trafficking sting. Yes, so the county sheriff's office there last week announced the arrests of 26 people, including Stephen Hovanek. He's the former chief of staff for the Americas Division of the Department of Defense Education Activity in connection with an alleged human trafficking ring. So this is huge news. He was a part of this ring. It had like 26 people in it or something, and the video is kind of crazy. So Coweta, a county sheriff's office, they released the video, and he's 64 years old. He was charged with pandering, a misdemeanor in Georgia, after he allegedly solicited sex in a motel room with an undercover agent. That's according to Fox 5 Atlanta. So that's huge news. This is an operation, and they arrested this guy. He was a top Pentagon official. And I think he was there for like 13 years or something crazy like that. So crazy. It was a 2-day operation. Good on the sheriff's office, good on the folks who got this sex trafficking ring busted, but it happens here in America. Here we go. Good morning. Hey, I was just telling folks on the stream about this story that just came across the desk, and I'm going to tell you guys, this Pentagon official overseeing federal schools arrested in Georgia for human trafficking. There was a human trafficking sting that went on. He was a senior Pentagon official, one of the top Pentagon officials, who oversaw federally operated school systems in America. And now he's been arrested in Georgia I guess it was a human trafficking sting. So the sheriff's office, they released the video. His name is Stephen Hovanek, and he was the former chief of staff for the Americas Division of the Defense Department Education Activity in connection with an alleged human sex trafficking ring. Now he is 64 years old. He was charged with pandering, which is just a misdemeanor in Georgia, but he in the video solicits sex in a hotel or motel room with an undercover agent, actually. So they wound up arresting like 26 people in connection to this human trafficking ring. But wowza, I think this guy was in the Department of Defense for like 13 years or something like that, something crazy. So they exist, human traffickers, and they exist in our government. Okay, he's a top Pentagon official, and he was 64 years old, and he oversaw the entire U.S. military school system. He was busted for paying an undercover agent for sex in a motel room, and wow, I mean, just absolutely wild. All right, that's going to do it for us here on the Morning Buzz. Didn't get to all my stories, but I appreciate you listening, and go ahead and find us on cities929.com. Find the podcast, share it out with your friends. You guys have a great rest of your day. Bye-bye. Love you. And we'll do it all over again tomorrow morning, 6 a.m. to 9 a.m. Central Time. It's been the Morning Buzz with Kat Peterson on Cities 92.9.